This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. And so gun control measures being advanced and bandied about and debated, some more thoughtfully than others. But before we get to that, we're going to talk to Todd Vandemyde, who is the executive director of FFL Illinois, Federal Firearm License, FFL Illinois, which is an Illinois Gun Dealers Trade Association. But you wanted to make the point about some of the victims of the shooting in Parkland being honored.
Yeah, three of the victims, Peter Wang, 15, Martin Dubuque, and Alana Petty, received Medal of Heroism for their extraordinary work and how they saved lives during last week's shooting. All three were members of the junior ROTC. Peter Wang even died in his uniform, and they've been posthumously honored and accepted to West Point Academy. And here's Peter Wang's teacher, Deborah Haas, to talk about what he did.
At first you thought this was just the drill.
I thought it might be the drill, and I went to shut the blinds, and then I turned to say, turn the lights off. And when I turned, I saw my student. I saw him, and he was bleeding.
And he died saving the lives of others, holding the door open so that others could get in. He was shot, and then he still shut the door, and he died. So he was honored at West Point. His friends say that he always wanted to attend West Point. So I'm glad that they honored him at his funeral with full honor.
Yeah, that is a nice gesture on the part of West Point.
Yep.
And again, it's
the U.S. Military Academy. God bless them.
And it's important, like the coach we've talked about too, to tell these stories of heroism in that crisis situation, and remember heroes who saved lives in that horrific situation. For more on the topic of guns, with the president moving to direct Department of Justice to ban bump stocks, the president also tweeting about enhancing the NICS system, the background check system, discussions of mental health amid all kinds of other discussions. We're pleased to be joined by the aforesaid Todd Vandemyde, who's, and again, executive director of FFL Illinois, a Illinois Gun Dealers Trade Association, and also a former NRA lobbyist. Todd, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Nice to be with you guys.
So what was your reaction to the action the president took yesterday?
It remains to be seen how he does it. I think there actually needs to be a change in the law, because you're talking about how you're going to define a machine gun. And that is set by statute. I think that if they simply try to work around that with a rule change and try to shoehorn something into a definition, it causes some pause, because now you're letting a governmental agency arbitrarily simply change a definition, and it could lead to a very, very bad precedent, allowing for a lot of other things to be regulated or banned.
What is your biggest concern? I mean, John Kasich, governor of Ohio, came out yesterday and said, what is the big deal if we take AR-15s away? That doesn't mean we want to strip your Second Amendment rights.
Well, AR-15s are the most popular modern sporting rifle that there is, in the country. There's probably between 10 and 15 million of those. The Heller decision, the Supreme Court handed down, said that firearms in common use. If you can take an AR-15 away, which is functionally identical to hundreds of other types of firearms, where do you stop? And you now have the government in one form or another saying good gun, bad gun. We've drawn lines with machine guns and other things like that. These are not machine guns. These are semi-automatic rifles that fire one shot per pull of the trigger.
All right, what game do you shoot with an AR-15? Just help me, because I don't know.
Deer, coyotes, prairie dogs. They're excellent rifles for hunting. I use one for hunting. They're accurate. They have low recoil. They're highly modular, so you can make them fit. Anything from a teenager to a woman, of small stature to 6'6" men. They're great for competition. I use one in competition. So does my 18-year-old son. They're America's rifle.
And I just want you to elaborate on the points you made too. It's like ban AR-15. Okay, well, there. How many other weapons out there that aren't designated AR-15s have the same functionality as the AR-15?
Hundreds. You have everything from SIG rifles to the AR. You have Remington 7400s, which are a semi-automatic, magazine-fed, more traditional hunting-style rifle. There are just hundreds and hundreds of rifles. If you look at the Feinstein ban, she tried to list 600 guns that weren't banned, but then had a list of, hundreds that were. You start getting into this government making lists, good, bad. It seems ironic that the left doesn't like it when there's a list of countries where we should not accept, certain immigrants without, doing a vetting process, but they're completely happy to sit here and make a list of good guns or bad guns. They have no compunction about treating the Second Amendment as if it's some sort of privilege to be meted out on a whim.
So this is using the AR-15 as the boogeyman to get to open this up and start banning everything that, as again was previously the case, they term arbitrarily and capriciously an assault weapon.
Correct. I mean, that term was made up by the anti-gunners to try to confuse the general public that these semi-automatic rifles, look like machine guns. And their actual quote was that if we can make the public believe that they look like a machine gun, they'll think it is. And it's not. None of these firearms are that. Machine guns are highly regulated. They're illegal in the state of Illinois, with the exception of law enforcement and manufacturers. In the other 30 states that allow them, they are regulated by fingerprints, background check, $200 tax stamp per rifle. It's a whole different world to get into that. So they consistently try to say that, these are military-style weapons. They're not. If you take that definition, the Remington 700 bolt-action rifle is a military weapon because that's what the platform is for the U.S. Army sniper rifle.
So what?
Keep trying to.
Yeah, no, go on. Finish.
No, go ahead, Amy.
Well, what do you think can stop mass shootings at schools? I mean, what is your solution? I mean, if there even is a solution, but what are some of your ideas?
Well, part of it is, in the Florida situation, Florida's different than Illinois. Illinois has a very different set of laws. And under our system here in Illinois, which says that, you have to have a FOID card. So, and if you have a juvenile record, you can't get a FOID card. So I think based on what we're learning about this individual's juvenile record, he would have been disqualified. The police have the ability, if they see clear and present danger, to petition the state police to have the FOID card revoked. I think that based on 39 calls, this individual would have met that criteria. We also have reporting by psychologists, school people, and others. He would have met that criteria. Then you had the FBI. You had a systematic failure from the school district who refused to report him to local PDs, to the clinical psychologists at the state, to the county who had 39 calls for service, to the federal government with the FBI. And when you have a systemic failure at every level of government that is supposed to protect us, the answer then becomes we're going to give more background checks to the FBI, or we're going to sit there and start infringing on other people's rights because the government didn't do their job. I don't quite understand that. What we can do is we can sit there and, when they say, if you see something, say something. Well, then those reports have to be taken seriously by the agencies that they're reported to. They can't just be swept under the rug and, somebody missed something. This is not the first time the federal government has missed a report or interaction with the shooter and pushed it off. So I think that when you look at this, you have to sit there and say, why wasn't it acted upon, and why didn't they use the tools at hand?
Speaking of tools, David French in National Review argues for gun violence restraining orders that make us all safer, he argues, while empowering the individual and protecting liberty. He points out there's a 2014 statute in California that went into effect in 2016. Broadly speaking, they permit a spouse, parent, sibling, or person living with a troubled individual to petition a court for an order enabling law enforcement to temporarily take that individual's gun rights away. And he argues for a narrowly tailored law that would provide such an outlet, but it would empower family members who see something troubling and others close to a potential shooter to do something after they see something and say something, even if authorities won't otherwise, as was the case in this situation. How do you react to that?
Well, we've had those bills proposed here in Illinois, and they don't have any due process in them. The way the bills that are proposed sit there and say that a family member or other who has a connection can sit there and petition the court, take ex parte hearings where the defendant is not allowed to be there, not allowed to have counsel, not allowed to present contravening evidence, and they get to go use hearsay evidence in front of a judge where you're not there to strip you of your rights.
Well, what if but well, hold on a second. If French argues that a properly constructed piece of legislation in this direction would grant the respondent the opportunity to contest the claims against him. So if that provision was in the law,
I'd have to see how that would work to see if it makes it much better. But it almost sounds like you have to go to court to prove your innocence, Dan. And you being a law student, that's not the way our system works.
Well, I understand, but to some extent, our system actually does work this way. I mean, you have involuntary commitment options, and courts can intervene. But so,
which then raises what's the standard of proof, what's the burden of proof in order to achieve that, and if the individual is found to be not have this hearsay or not have this, I mean, what are they going to use? Facebook posts? Your mother-in-law doesn't like the fact you have guns in the home because of her grandchildren are around, and wants to use your Facebook post. Is that considered enough?
Well, I mean, for example,
you have to look at the standards of evidence, and you have to look at what.
No, I understand. I appreciate that. But I mean, in Florida, you have Baker's Law, which provides law enforcement an option to get basically a 12-hour hold on a person for an emergency psych exam in certain cases. So, I mean, something like that that provides people their due process rights. I agree about that concern, but also provides a tool for people to basically take action, as I said, where they see something that the agencies with law enforcement responsibility are failing to do, in addition to obviously trying to upgrade the quality of what law enforcement does about the federal and the state level.
I think the devil would be in the details as to how it's administered and how it's enforced, what the standards are.
So you saw that in just the politics of this a little bit, the Dallas mayor pro tem urging the NRA to find a new home for its convention. Just kind of the Kill the NRA billboard that went up in Florida yesterday, and just the nature of the rhetoric you're hearing about the NRA being a terrorist organization, and so then by definition, NRA members are apparently terrorists. People who support the Second Amendment, whether you're a member of the NRA or you're not, people who are gun enthusiasts have blood on their hands. How do you react to the rhetoric you're hearing?
Well, it seems that the nonviolent left is showing just how violent they want to be, that not only do they not like the Second Amendment to the Constitution, but they think many of us shouldn't have the First Amendment, the right to assemble, the right to free speech. It just seems typical that the people who want to point the finger of fascism at, supporters of the president or others are probably most likely the biggest fascists that are running around. They're the ones that want to treat rights as if they're whimsical privileges to be meted out only on their, approval.
He is Todd Vandemyde. He's the executive director of FFL Illinois. It's a gun dealers trade association here in Illinois. Todd, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. And if you guys want to go out, I'll take you out and I'll let you play with my ARs and teach you all there is about them.
All right, very good. And there you go. That's an invitation for you, Amy. Thanks, Todd.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.